Go for it.
Okay, yeah. So thanks, Taylor, for putting this panel together. And my name is Davin Holen. I'm with Alaska Sea Grant, the Marine Advisory Program, and I also work collaboratively with the Alaska Center for Climate Assessment and Policy, both of which are programs at the University of Alaska Fairbanks that are partnerships with NOAA. And I'm an anthropologist. My background is studying subsistence economies in Alaska and the importance of those economies for the mixed economy, the mixed subsistence cash economy, and how those provide for continuity of cultural ways of being. So I wanted to just briefly mention a little bit about Alaska. I was asked by the National Sea Grant Office to participate in this panel to talk about coastal resilience and the efforts that Sea Grant is doing in coastal resilience. The efforts I'm going to talk about today are just here in Alaska, but we do have coastal resilience specialists working all over the US and California, down in Georgia, and other places that are doing a lot of work working directly with communities. And so what I'm talking about is just a small part of what the National Sea Grant Program has going on across the country. Just briefly, here in Alaska, we focus on a lot of things, especially coastal economies, and the importance of those economies for Alaskans. Alaska has a large seafood industry. Over $4 billion worth of seafood products come out of Alaska and employs over 56,000 people, or jobs, with about 26,000 Alaskans employed in the seafood industry. But the other side of that is that the coastal regions are incredibly important for subsistence economies. Just to articulate that, for example, in the Arctic region, the average person harvests about 420 pounds of wild food from the environment, most of which are marine mammals, which come in large packages. That's why it's so high. But in other areas of Alaska, seafood is incredibly important, especially salmon, for the way of life. The climate here in Alaska is changing rapidly. Over the last 30 years or so, we've had about 2-degree increase across the state, but that is expected to increase dramatically in the coming century. Especially in coastal Alaska, the temperatures could increase as much as 10 to 12 degrees by the end of the century. And that's causing some severe problems for communities, especially in the coastal region. The way in which we work here at the Sea Grant program here in Alaska is to just help communities start to talk about these issues. We start conversations, we bring in scientists to communities, and then turn that around and try to understand what issues are coming from the communities themselves. We mainly work with tribal communities in the coastal region. Alaska has 220 tribes, and we work directly with those tribes. This is usually followed by some kind of vulnerability assessment. We do some monitoring. We work with organizations, nonprofits, tribes to do their own monitoring and try to provide decision support tools and data to help them make their own decisions. Those often go into mitigation plans or ultimately adaptation plans, where they think about what their community might look like a century from now and how they can adapt to that changing environment. Just briefly, some of the things that are happening in Alaska, I wanted to mention. What are some of the things that communities are adapting to? We have a reduction of sea ice, especially in Western Alaska. And this is coupled with a slow sea level rise. And so what happens is the fall and winter storms that have always occurred usually blew snow into the community, but now with open water, water is actually coming into communities and there's coastal inundation. Many of the communities in Western Alaska are located on the coast, near the coast, or in riverine systems that are influenced by the ocean. Erosion is occurring rapidly as our permafrost thaws. And as it gets warmer, that permafrost thaws, and we have communities that have lost up to 75 feet of coastline in a single storm, and most of their infrastructure is on the coast. And so they're dealing with that right now. Ocean acidification is another issue. We have productive shellfish fisheries here in Alaska from southeast to the north. And so those are impacting, we're still trying to understand how that impact might occur, both in shellfish species and then other species that eat some of those shellfish. Especially for us, salmon is one of those most important species. Now, some of these are really dramatic changes, but there's also more nuanced changes happening in other parts of Alaska. For example, as the climate changes in Southeast Alaska exists on just above freezing and below freezing during the winter, and they have great snowpack in the mountains. However, as the climate warms, a lot of that snow is now falling as rain. It makes its way into the system during the winter instead of in the spring with the snow melt. And so that has impacts for things like drought. There's also not enough cold water for salmon to return to in the spring. And so salmon are waiting longer and longer out in the ocean to come up into the river systems. They really need cold water to spawn in. And so some of the tribes that we've been working with are doing things like monitoring those water systems, and then we're helping to work to build, through the Sea Grant program, we're building models to think about what the future are for those streams, what they might look like in the future, based on water conditions, based on glacial melt and other factors. So the adaptation strategies we've taken over the last few years have been varied across the state. What we try to do is work with local organizations to actually adapt based on what their needs are and what their goals are. A couple of examples: we worked in Southeast Alaska with the Central Council Clinic at Haida, which represents 17 tribes in the Southeast, and they've developed an adaptation plan. And then we are helping to provide data and decision support tools to implement those plans. So for example, we work with the Chilkat Indian Association in Klukwan, and they also work collaboratively with the Chilkoot Indian Association in Haines to think about what the Chilkat Valley might look like in the future and what type of things that they need to monitor for and the changes that might be expected. These are smaller communities, but we've also worked in places like Kodiak, which is thinking about their fishery and the future of that fishery. But being an Alaskan community, they're also thinking about their subsistence economy, food security, and other aspects like infrastructure and energy and cultural well-being. To provide some of the tools that we have, we put together a website called adaptalaska.org, which explores some of these changes, everything from physical changes like sea ice to how the subsistence economy is changing across Alaska. We've provided tools to how they can make plans. We provide examples of those plans, resources, and then actually provide some kind of adaptation strategies, example of those that other people have done. So I just wanted to mention really that, Alaska is a very large state, but we're also a very small state in population. We have to work really collaboratively. The ocean is incredibly important for us. We have more coastline than the rest of the United States. And many of our communities are located on the coast and really dependent on coastal resources. But we're also being impacted by the changes in the climate. And what we're trying to do is work to build resilience in communities, and so that they can maintain the viability and vibrancy of their communities into the future. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Let's go to Amy.
Hi, everyone, and thanks again, Taylor, for organizing this panel today. So a little bit of background about me. I'm an aquatic ecologist working for the nonprofit Ocean Conservancy, and most of my focus is on federal ocean policy in Washington, D.C. So I do a lot of work bringing scientific research as well as what communities and stakeholders need within various states in the region to Capitol Hill. And I'm working really to make those connections with what science is telling us we need to address in the ocean and how we can work to improve management. So today I'm going to talk a bit about integrated ocean management. Sometimes you'll hear it termed ocean planning. There's various words associated with it, but really how integrated ocean management fits into some of these decade goals and the overarching theme. So integrated ocean management's really this approach of taking a more holistic approach in the way of the way we manage the ocean. It's really trying to get out of this very siloed management and looking at the consideration that there are interactions among these various management structures. And so this is really important now more than ever. And you've heard from some of the other panelists about climate change and the impacts facing communities. We've got increasing technologies in the offshore space. Now more than ever, we really need to start thinking more holistically about how we manage. So really all the decade goals and the overarching theme of sustainable development and management of our coast and ocean really fits squarely within this concept of integrated ocean management. We're also seeing a renewed commitment to this adaptive management approach with the recent high-level panel on sustainable ocean economy. So countries are starting to recognize the need and are committing to the development of EEZ-wide integrated ocean plans as a way to begin organizing ocean management priorities for the environment and for a sustainable future ocean economy.
Oh, I'm going to come around 2:30 or 3 o'clock.
So integrated ocean management plans really offer an opportunity for a nation to start to define societal goals that are specific to that location and work to advance those holistically. So as part of this effort, information on the ocean is really critical. This management approach prioritizes the importance of local context in decision-making, the value of transparency, and the necessity of robust community engagement, which are all themes that we've highlighted today and are really all themes that will make the decade incredibly successful. So in the US, just for a bit of context, we have the foundation for integrated ocean management in place at the federal level. This was accomplished through the National Ocean Policy Executive Order that directed relevant ocean and coastal agencies to coordinate and develop ocean plans in those regions that saw value and wanted to take that approach. It was really kickstarted by this concept and recognition that we have over 22 federal management agencies that have a stake in the ocean. And these are often not very coordinated. They're not coordinated on management. They're not coordinated on data collection or research. And so really, there's been a lot of work done to work to change that cultural change and make that shift that needs to happen within institutions to really change agency business as usual and move toward a bit more collective, collaborative approach. And really to improve this coordination and management, there has to be sort of both a structural change and a cultural change. So the structural change came through sort of directives and executive orders saying, establishing a council of all the various management agencies, outlining what regions look like, and demonstrating and signaling that political will at the federal level. But really it's the cultural change that sort of has to happen and drive change. And really that's about defining an approach, but then allowing people to see themselves in that process. So there has to be local and regional tailoring that has to happen to really meet those management needs for what that local context and what the people that live and work there actually need. And what we found is that all really has to be done on a voluntary basis. No one can really be forced to plan holistically, or really certain groups or particular areas will be turned off by that. So really one of the biggest challenges, at least here in the US, has been trying to balance coastal state interest and their needs with sort of what's happening at the federal level. And what we've really learned so far, some lessons learned from the US, is really that top-down directive doesn't work in isolation. You can't just have that top-down directive from the federal government, but you also have to have that support and from people who use and manage the ocean and are out there working and making a living. That they have to see themselves in that process and be brought into that process along from the beginning. So as a result, so far, the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic regions have developed comprehensive ocean plans, and then other regions are taking taking their own approach. they're compiling data and information to inform management, and maybe that's through a lens of specific priorities like restoration. But because local context is crucial, some regions have developed these more fully integrated ocean plans, while others have decided they want to define various management objectives that make sense for them. And so with any of these planning processes, data and information are really key to making more informed decisions. And robust engagement with the community is also critical to success, as work really needs to be done to define what those societal goals are, and how, what those societal goals are for an area, and how that should, and how the ocean should be managed. So some examples of that, for example, New England may value recreational boating and commercial fishing in a way that maybe an area on the West Coast does not, or maybe a specific industry or new technology wants to come in an area. But how do we manage those human activities, knowing that, ocean ecosystems are shifting and changing with climate? How do we account for the needs of marine mammals with increased ship traffic, and the potential interference with shipping, and how that might overlap with, say, important fisheries habitats, and what are the potential conflicts there? So taking more of an integrated ocean management approach, it allows you to look at all these uses at that system level and what those needs are, and take those into consideration and work to try to manage more adaptively. So I wanted to talk a little bit, sort of focusing more on like the data components, because I think particularly for the decade, that's something where I see a lot of this work intersecting. We have ocean observations that we've collected over the past half century, and they've greatly informed our understanding of how humans are altering Earth. But it's now time to really start to reframe and expand our thinking to put these ocean observations and knowledge to work for everyone, not just to benefit scientists, but large and small business owners, resource managers, what innovators need, and the public. So really my hope as part of the decade is that there's a consideration given to who benefits from data and information, and starting to ask those questions. So as new ideas and observational tools or technologies are developed, we really need to start considering the underlying reality of who our research currently benefits, and who should benefit in the future to achieve that economic and social equity. Questions like, how can we use existing data in new ways for the benefit not just of some, but of whole communities? And inclusivity really requires that full engagement in ocean exploration and new technologies by those who use and need ocean data. It also means, as was mentioned earlier, so the traditional knowledge must be thoughtfully included to provide insights and observations, and that underserved communities are engaged to fully acknowledge that social ecological system. And through all that, we start to improve our collective understanding of the ocean for the benefit of all of us. So as data is gathered and ocean exploration efforts continue, I would argue that they must start to align with societal goals for conservation and sustainability. So while it's valuable to understand the seafloor, we must not forget that the water column is also habitat, and that we need to direct our efforts to understand it as well. But because we've explored, so little of the ocean, we don't really know much about how disturbance in the deep ocean and what those impacts really are. So as we extend that exploration and that frontiers of knowledge, particularly under some of the decade work, we must really make sure we explore places within the ocean with a focus on conservation, knowledge sharing, and equitable use, and really not fall into that sort of lawless mentality that is steeped in secrecy and access grabbing. So for me, I see the decade as really an opportunity for us to develop new partnerships, to come together, plan ocean uses more holistically, contribute to a more sustainable future. It's really an opportunity to start to bring knowledge streams together from different parts of the world, and really, start to have conversations about how we want to move forward collectively and how we can all benefit from this new knowledge that we're gaining. So I think I'll stop there and happy to answer any questions, and thank everyone for joining us today.
Okay, we have Monica up, who due to technical difficulties, I'll be broadcasting. So Monica, can you talk, see if everyone can hear you?
Yes, can you all hear me?
Perfect. Okay, they can hear you. So you're a go.
Perfect, thank you. Thanks, Taylor. So thank you so much for inviting me to this amazing panel. I really enjoy listening to all the talks, and I think what I'm going to present to you today, it's a little bit different, but I think it complements all the presentations we've heard so far. Just want to give a brief introduction about myself. My name is Monica Grasso. I'm currently the NOAA Chief Economist, and I will work with a team of social scientists in NOAA, and our goal is really to integrate social science into NOAA's programs and operations. A little bit of background about myself. Of course, I'm an economist, but I also have background in oceanography. I grew near the ocean. I worked with the mangroves, fishermen communities. I've worked in oil spill damages assessment. And during all my years of experience, I realized how important it is to communicate with decision makers the value and impact of scientific and measurement actions. So on that note, today I'd like to give you a brief overview of the new ocean economy statistics. This is a project that NOAA has been developing in collaboration with the Bureau of Economic Analysis for the past three and a half years. And we just released the prototype statistics on June 2nd, and it is available to anybody that wants to see. And I think the slide that Taylor is showing you today at the end, you're gonna see the link to the data. So this is statistics. They're based on extensive research and also consultations with the experts. They help us guide this effort. It measures the ocean-dependent activities and industries' contributions to the U.S. economy using a methodology that is consistent with the BA's core statistics, such as the gross domestic product. So these are the most comprehensive and accurate statistics that have been produced to date at national level. And as I said, it is a prototype, and we expect to make major refinements in the next year or so. So since the publication to, in a year or so, we expect to get comments. If you have comments, feedback on the statistics or the account, please feel free to reach out. We expect to have input from the public and from stakeholders to improve the information we have so far. And I also like to note that the statistics and the methodology are consistent with measures that have been developed and are in development from other nations, such as Portugal, Ireland, and the OECD, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development as well. So in the future, we hope we'll be able to compare our economies and have very robust data. So the main objective of the Ocean Decade is to build a comprehensive understanding of the ocean and use this knowledge for our decision making. So this economic statistics present a clear picture of our ocean economy and help national policymakers marine industries and investors to make informed decisions about how to plan for the future, protecting our people, our economy, and our environment for future generations. In addition, academic institutions and nonprofits can use this data for research to further advance our understanding of the ocean and demonstrate the economic importance of their activities. And talking about the new situation, the COVID-19 impact. So this data will also represent the baseline measures to do any type of assessment of COVID-19 impacts on the ocean economy. The current statistics is for the period of 2014 to 2018, and future runs will enable us to identify the magnitude of the impacts and the most affected industries. It will also help policymakers to identify vulnerable industries and develop targeted investments. These new statistics highlight just how important it is to sustain our oceans and coasts and emphasize the importance of sustainable, science-driven planning and resilience efforts. So the visual that I'm sharing with you today is a summary of the results of the statistics. And on the second page, as you see, we have some information on the major results. I want to highlight that the statistics include 10 sectors, and they represent economic activities that are developed in ocean coastal areas, but also in the Great Lakes as well. So we include the Great Lakes because it's a huge marine economy. The information shows ocean economy products and service were worth 670 billion in 2018 and nearly 373 billion of the US GDP, representing about 1.8% of the GDP, which is bigger than agriculture and public utilities. It also includes statistics on jobs, and you see that the ocean economy supported 2.3 million jobs in 2018. But perhaps the most important piece of this analysis is that our ocean economy grew faster than the wider US economy in 2018. And just to give you a little background of what we consider ocean-dependent economies. So we included in this statistics all the activities that take place in the marine environment, such as marine transportation, use essential inputs from the marine environment, such as seafood processing, produce goods and services mainly for use in the marine environment, such as navigation equipment, and would not take place if not located in the proximity of the coast. And this is pretty much all the recreational activities, include beach, vacation rental property, etc. So if you look on page 2, you see the 10 sectors that we have in the account. That is tourism and recreation, include hotels and recreation expenses, national defense and public administration, that includes federal, state, and local government expenditures, fisheries and other bioproducts, that include commercial fishing, aquaculture, seafood processing, and emerging marine pharmaceutical industry, research and education, representing all investments from government, industries, academia, labs, and other institutes, professional and business services. Include services that are specialized in ocean-related affairs or specially designated for ocean-related businesses, dredging, restoration, other construction activities such as beach nourishment, harbor dredging, and habitat restoration, Offshore oil and gas includes extraction and production, marine transportation, shipbuilding, and power generation, to include electrical power. We also include some emerging industries, such as aquaculture, and as I said, marine pharmaceuticals, ocean exploration, offshore renewable energy, and autonomous vehicles. So just to close, just want to highlight that, again, that there's a link in the slide to the BEA website with a complete data set and methodology report, and also an email for you to send any comments or questions you might have in this account. So I think that's all. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you, panel, for sticking with me with all of this. Thank you for everyone who has tuned in to listen, and we'll hopefully have a live Q&A session to talk more about this. So have a good rest of your day, week, time of day, wherever you are. Thanks.
Thank you.